So I started to think about this more, and I started to think about how I spend my days. My days, like yours, that lead to my weeks, that lead to my months, that make up the entirety of my life. Growing the business while outgrowing your busyness really comes down to provoking better in three key ways: selling better, working better, and managing better. Well, first of all, outgrowing busyness starts with a mindset, like many things do. When we reflexively answer a question like, "Hey Mike, how's it going? I'm so busy," what I think we're projecting is, I'm important, I'm valuable.
What if you could transform your business from a time-draining monster into a well-oiled machine? Whitney Hahn, CEO of ProvokeBetter.com, is here today to share her secrets on making that transformation happen. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mike. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm really glad you're here. So your mission, as I understand it, is to help entrepreneurs outgrow their busyness and build thriving businesses. So what inspired you to focus on that mission?
After being in business myself for many years, like you, I've gone to many business events, business card exchanges, networking events, conferences, and there seemed to be a theme on everyone that I spoke with. When I would greet somebody, "Hey, Mike, how's it going?" 9 times out of 10, the answer was, "Oh, I'm so busy." And then when I asked what they were busy doing, it was work. Everyone knows what that means. So I started to think about how I spend my days. My days, like yours, that lead to my weeks, that lead to my months, that make up the entirety of my life. I have a belief that no one will end their life on this planet thinking, "I wish I'd spent more time at work." And so I resolved at that moment that I was going to release my attachment to busyness and grow my business in a way that was more sustainable, in a way that allowed me to be energized at the end of the day, just like I might be at the beginning of the day, and to really make sure that I'm focusing on the most important things, not just the next things.
Yeah, that's the quandary that people deal with. I personally don't like priority to-do lists. I do my stuff by context because I always tell people when they ask me, "Why would you do that?" If I'm on vacation in New York City and my house here in Las Vegas needs a new roof and it's my number one priority, I can't get that taken care of because I'm in New York. So does that mean I just stop working? No, I have other things I have to get done. So I have to figure out what I can do within the context of where I am. If I'm on the phone, I have a list of phone calls I have to make, etc. So I think it's funny. I had never thought about that, but it's true. A lot of people, when you ask them, "Where have you been? I haven't seen you in a while." "Oh, I've been busy." And you're right. It's always that word, busy. And it's almost as if they assume you're going to know what "I've been busy" actually means. And I don't even think they know what it actually means.
Agreed.
So Provoke Better, you guys offer a huge range of services. How do those services collectively help businesses become more efficient and effective?
Growing the business while outgrowing your busyness really comes down to provoking better in 3 key ways: selling better, working better, and managing better. And if you can wrap your arms around those 3 concepts, then you are well on your way to making sure that you have a very healthy, sustainable business that supports your life instead of depleting it.
I like that answer. So then you've also created this video business playbook, help video production companies grow. And I find that interesting because that's not a niche that I even thought existed. So are there any strategies from that playbook, though, that can be applied to other types of businesses?
Lots and lots of strategies. The business that I ran prior to opening Provoke Better was a video marketing agency. I started it the year before YouTube.com was registered as a domain name. And so everything I thought I was going to get into business to do and produce changed dramatically in a very short period of time. And so I, like many small business owners, spent an enormous tuition at the School of Hard Knocks trying to figure out how to run a business, how to be scrappy, how to make good purchasing decisions, good hiring decisions, figuring out pricing, all of the things that come along with being an entrepreneur. The moment you open the door and put the shingle up to be in a business that revolves rather around the talent that you have. I was good at telling stories and good at producing videos. So hands on hips, chest held high one day, I said, I'll open a video marketing agency. How hard could it be? as we all know, it's a lot harder than you think to do almost any type of industry when basically your introduction into it is, I was good at a thing, now I'll create a business where I start to do the thing. And this is equally true in technology companies. I have many friends in the tech space, for example, who are great programmers. And so they open up a development shop. Or they're great website designers. And so they open up a website development shop. And now we have all the extra responsibilities on us when it comes to doing that. So that was a hard learning ground. I just now apply it more broadly to other businesses in primarily tech and manufacturing that I work with.
Yeah, I find that most of those strategies can carry over. Running a business is running a business. It's more the product or service that you offer that differentiates what type of business it is if you really break it down to its core principles. So I think that's interesting. You emphasize, and you've said it once or twice during this interview, you mentioned the importance of outgrowing busyness. So what are some practical steps you can offer entrepreneurs so that they can achieve that?
First of all, outgrowing busyness starts with a mindset, like many things do. When we reflexively answer a question like, hey, Mike, how's it going? I'm so busy. What I think we're projecting is I'm important, I'm valuable. And we confuse busy with productive or busy with valuable. I'm so busy. You must be in high demand. And if you're in high demand, you must be valuable. I am pursuing less busy and providing value in different ways. I have a marriage that I want to remain joyful. I have parents who are in their 80s and still vibrant, and I want to be able to spend time with them. And so the very first step that I'll suggest you do if you're trying to outgrow your busyness is to think about what you really want to be busy doing. At the end of your life, what do you want to look back on and say, I did that? And I call these your meconomic drivers. Business owners, leaders of organizations, we often focus on the economic drivers of a business, right? What's the revenue? What's the profit margin? What's our customer retention rate? All of those things that help a business thrive. And you have to look at that, of course, because if you don't, you do not, in fact, have a business. You have a very expensive hobby, which is not sustainable. But after you've taken care of that, you want to make sure that you're also protecting your meconomic drivers, the things that matter most to you and that make you get up in the morning and try to slay a dragon every single day that you're going to work, that you're trying to lead this organization or run this business. And so for me, my meconomic drivers are have a joyful marriage, be available for my parents, and build a business that could run without me when I want it to. Now, if you think about it, Mike, you're probably in the same position because I know that you rely on a dispersed team to support your efforts as well. When you're able to create a business that can run without you when you want it to, the other meconomic drivers in your life become a lot easier. When I can step away from the office for 2 weeks like I did last year and go to Fiji with my spouse, awesome, great for a joyful marriage when you're hanging out on a beach in Fiji. And when I can pause in the middle of my day because mom and dad are coming into town and, hey, can we have spontaneous lunch today? That is great for developing and maintaining the relationship with my parents. So change your mindset is step number one and think about really in life what you're going to look back on and say, Whitney, you did a great job. That was a wonderful way to invest every hour that led to the weeks that led to your lifetime. Once you've done that, now you're like, okay, great. I understand it. What are the practical ways that I can outgrow my busyness? And so the second thing I want you to do after that is look at the processes that are in your company in a way that maybe you haven't before. For many small business owners in particular, large businesses, however, are not immune to this. Processes grow out of need, but never get reevaluated. Technology companies love to reevaluate their tech stack, but they are loath, it seems, to evaluate their task stack. I love a skinny tech stack. I love a skinny task stack as well. And that comes from evaluating what your processes are and looking for the process debt. Those antiquated, accumulated processes that were developed because Whitney did this one way, Mike did this the other way, but now our teams have gotten bigger and our objectives have changed. Does it still work? We often fail to evaluate those processes. So you have to identify them, map them, and then look at them and say, are these even necessary? Because surprisingly, They're often not. There are often things that you can cut out of the process, and you have not endangered your customer support. You have not endangered the experience that your clients have. You have not put at risk any of the checks and balances and approvals, but you can often cut out process steps, and everything functions just as well without them.
Yeah, I tell my clients all the time that it's great that you have processes, but when did you develop these processes? How long ago? And you have to do a regular audit of them. Even my wife and I run multiple businesses, and so it's easy to get lost in the weeds. And we have in our task management system, we have an area where we have reminder tasks for audit this process, make sure it's still accurate and it still works the way it's supposed to work. And sometimes you find even super simple little things like how to post a blog on WordPress, and the process changes slightly because they change the tools. And if you were to leave your SOP the way it is and hand it to a new person, they'd be lost. And I think a lot of times we assume that, oh, they'll overcome that. They'll figure it out. But when I always feel like when you hand somebody an SOP, you're telling them, this is the way I want this done. And who's going to be crazy enough to go off that path when the boss says, this is the way I want it done? So you have to make sure your SOPs are in line. So I really love that you say, go back and audit. Plus, you find deficiencies, tools that no longer work, or what you're trying to do, or gaps where there's a process missing. And if you had it, life would be much easier. I love what you said about being able to run a business where you don't have to be present all the time for it to continue to operate. That should really be everybody's goal when they go into business, because why else run your own business? I don't see the benefit if you don't have that. And I think I hadn't thought about that, but that's a great side effect, that you can literally go on vacation and you don't have to think about your business. I had a situation last year where we were going to visit my wife's father in Canada. I have my tech business set up so that it just runs, and had a client that was wanting to launch during the time that we're going to be there. My wife kept saying, should we change the dates that we're going? I said, no, it's going to be fine. I literally just had to wake up that morning, check the website, make sure everything was running. Okay, it's great. Cool. We're done. Took me 5 minutes from my phone, shot off a message to the client. They were happy. I had people on my team on standby ready to do whatever they needed to do. Just makes life so much easier. And you have time then for kids, elderly parents, et cetera. Those things are important. They're really important.
Not only supports your life, Mike, and makes it possible for you and your wife to be and do what you want to with the people and the causes that matter to you, but I would also suggest that it is the most responsible thing that you can do for your employees and your clients. If you represent a single point of failure for whether or not this process is successful, whether or not that client's website can launch, whether or not the e-commerce store functions the way it's supposed to function, whatever it is, if you are the single point of failure for that, I think that's irresponsible. And so you have a duty to make sure that you have a stunt double available, at least one, when you are away from the office. That is not just equipping your employees and giving them a chance to grow and flex their own professional development muscles, but it is also protecting the very thing that your clients entrusted you to do, which is be available to help them solve their problems when they need it.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than, like, when I get new engagements with clients, I have to make sure, I'll always say to them, make sure you send me an email. Well, why? Because I want to make sure you don't go into spam. I want to be able to respond to you when you send me an email. And then I also give them my cell phone number and tell them to send me a text, make sure we can connect that way. And it just makes them feel more comfortable. At first, they think it's a little strange. Like, why is he asking me to send me an email when I don't have anything to say yet? And when you explain, I just want to make sure your emails get to me. I don't want to find out later. Like, I have a friend who, he and his wife run a supplement business, and I help them with their website from time to time. And she'll ask for changes. And her stuff just, I don't know why, anytime, if she sends me a regular email, it goes into my inbox. She sends me an email asking for changes and like attaching things, it goes into spam. So I told her, hey, just send me a text when you send me an email. I don't want to bother you. Well, but it's more of a bother if 2 weeks later you say, a thing I sent you 2 weeks ago, it has to get done now. I don't have time to do that. So communication is key, right? And you have to be able to communicate with your clients. And
you do.
Like
and
you said, not be that roadblock.
Yeah, the last thing you want to do is get in the way of progress and taking care of your customers. So don't be that single point of failure. It doesn't make you more important, actually. It weakens the entire organization.
Right. So do you have a success story where maybe one of your clients really transformed their business by implementing your strategies?
In the case of process optimization, there was a video agency, which I understand very well since I just used to own one, that was 12 years. At that point, they were 12 years in business. So not brand new. They'd been around the block. The three main founders of the company were still part of the organization, and they'd brought on two other junior partners. So small organization of 5 people doing what they're doing really well from a visual delivery standpoint, but not from a process standpoint. So I said, have you ever actually mapped your processes out from when the client signs the contract to when you deliver the finished video? We all know what needs to be done. Yeah, but do you? Or do you think you all know the same thing? It's like that old story about the 3 blind men that are touching the elephant in different places. Each one of you thinks you understand what this client needs from this video campaign, but you're all touching it in different ways. One of you is working in the script. One of you is doing filming. One of you is doing editing. One of you is doing graphics. How do you know everything is moving? I want you to map it out. Visually whiteboard it, get giant sticky notes on the walls. I don't care how you do it. We actually walk through an exercise with them. But for the purpose of your listeners, you can do it almost any way you want. But you need to be able to map major aspects of each process, like the pizza tracker. The pie cannot go in the oven unless the toppings have already been put on. It cannot be delivered unless it's out of the oven and it's been quality controlled. You have to do the same thing for your business. So they humored me at the time. They felt like that's what they were doing, and they mapped out their process. And so I said, I pointed out places here and here. Let me double click and zoom in on what happens the moment you get the project signed. How does the creative team know what the account manager has sold? Because sales often makes the promises that operations has to keep, right?
Always.
Technology is no different. We make the promises operations got to live with. Oh, you told them we'd deliver what? Okay. So how do you make that handoff? They learn about it when we're meeting with the client in the kickoff meeting. Why doesn't your creative team know about it before the kickoff meeting? They should not be trying to understand the project at the same moment you're trying to convince the client that they're in good, capable hands. That seems like a miss. So one of the gaps that you talked about earlier, right? So just as an example, that was one place where handoffs and internal communication places, they realized they had a gap because they had not yet, in fact, installed the microchips in one another's brains that let them just magically know what the other one was doing. The Vulcan mind meld, much as I try to master it, it doesn't work for me. Long story short, by the end of the process, they recognized there were multiple places where they could improve the client experience. They could reduce the amount of time that it took to get a project through their pipeline. So they increased the velocity and the momentum that a project had, which in turn, of course, reduced the overhead, the kind of mental carrying costs that you have when you're working on a project. Instead of it just meandering along lazily for 5 or 6 months, they're like, man, once we're past 3 or 4 months in this project, we need to be done with it or we just don't care anymore. It's the reality of the situation. So they were able to tighten up their processes and now they have great momentum through it. All of that, once they got it in place, also helped them increase their capacity to bring in new projects without the need to increase the overhead by adding more people to it. Nobody felt burned out. Everybody understood what was going on. They could take new projects in without feeling the stress of, oh, we've got 6 things going. Because everybody knew where the pizza was in the pizza tracker, where the video was in their process, who was responsible for it, how long that should typically take, who was responsible for client communications, etc. So it really helped them even out their workflow and allow them to take on more work without more expenses of extra people to get that work done.
That's excellent. I like that story. I think some of my clients could use that same advice because some of them have been in their positions for so long that they just do their job by rote. And then they'll say, oh, they know what I expect. Are you sure? Right. I want to ask. So what's the strangest piece of business advice that you've ever given that turned out to be really effective?
I never give strange advice. I'm sure that's not true. I'm sure at the outset, someone thought it was going to be strange. Think about that for a second. Nothing springs to mind, Mike.
Okay, that's fine. Maybe you don't give strange advice. I've had people tell me that my advice is counterintuitive. Like I tell them things like, get rid of the jargon in your communication. And then they say, but then my team's not going to understand me. And I said, well, it's probably not true. Your team will understand you. It's the other people that need to understand you, like your boss, for instance, like your CEO. They're not going to understand you when you use the jargon. You got to stop using the jargon. And they say that's strange, but I actually think that's a hard question to answer, because why would we give the advice if we thought it was strange?
See, that's it. Exactly. When you talk about no jargon, that's something I preach all the time. So that seems completely natural and logical to me.
Yeah, exactly. And I know I was voted, when I was active as a CTO, I was voted twice by a magazine, the most user-friendly technologist, because I don't use jargon. When I go talk to somebody, I speak to them in plain English. I've been brought into projects simply because tech team is talking past management and management's talking past tech team. Stick me in the middle and I translate.
That happens all the time. And I'm often in a similar position. Tell it to me like I'm a gifted and talented fifth grader. That's one of my favorite questions to ask, right? I'm gifted and talented, but I'm still in fifth grade. So you have to make me understand it. And that is actually a harder skill for many to do than you might imagine. Because
I love your energy. I love how you have the meconomics. That stuff is great. It makes you remember it. So what's a common myth that you've heard about business growth that you'd like to debunk?
I'll give my answer and try to clean it up for the PG version, because it's something I get pretty passionate about sometimes. I effing hate hustle culture. I think that, and this goes back to the busyness, that we are not doing entrepreneurs any service when we say, if you want it to go faster, if you want it to be better, you need to work harder. You need to get up earlier. You need to stay up later. You need to take your laptop on vacation. And if you're not doing that, you're a loser. My hair stands up on my arms just describing it to you. Like, if you'll excuse me for a moment, I think I have to throw up off the side of the microphone here. I mean, it's just, I think it is so destructive. It causes burnout. It causes stress to rise. It causes us to endanger our own health sometimes, our personal relationships, our mental collateral, right? Energy that we have to solve problems is limited. It is not limitless. So even if your body doesn't feel tired, your brain has just expended all the calories it can for all the great ideas that day. And so I think a pervasive myth that I would love to go away is just that hustling more, throwing your body into the fray more will fix things. Because my experience is quite the opposite. It just makes it worse. If you are always on vacation with your laptop, if you are always working in the evenings, if you're always working on the weekends, my encouragement to you is to take a pause. That might be just 2 hours on a Friday afternoon to start out with, to start your weekend just a little bit earlier. And that may be a long weekend. And then that might be 5 days off or something. But you have to take a pause to regenerate and get new ideas and refresh your mental capacity as well as your physical capacity.
Yeah, that's huge. It's one of the concerns I have about, I know people love remote work and working from home, and I know the mental health benefits to it are immense.
Sure.
But it still has to be something you keep under control. When we moved here to Las Vegas, we purposely got a house that had 2 extra bedrooms so that my wife can have her office and I can have my office. And I actually did something that seems so simple. I close my office door. When I'm done for the day, I walk out of the office, I close the door. And especially my office is off of our living room. So it's the front bedroom of the house. And when I first moved here, I'd leave the door open. And then you're sitting there and you glance over at your office and go, I should go check on this. I should go check on that. And you get sucked in and close the door. It just reminds me that whatever needs to be done can be done tomorrow. We don't need to do it today. Weekend work has gone by the wayside. I don't really need to work on weekends anymore. And I think it's your mindset. And if you're going to work from home, you need to make sure that you're putting, this is my work space and my work time. And then when I'm done, because That's one of the nice things about working in an office. You leave the computer there, everything stays there, and you go home. You don't really, unless someone calls you asking a question, you're pretty much left alone. But when you're working at home, especially if you're using your own personal laptop that you use to play games at night or whatever, you're always working. And that hustle culture, like I once had a man get on a call with me because he was a CIO, and his wife was telling him she was going to leave him if he didn't cut his hours. And I said, wow, how many hours are you working? And he says, 110 hours a week. And I don't see any way to work less than that. It's just not possible. I'm happy to report he only works 35 hours a week now, and he saved his marriage, but it was all mindset. I love it when someone tells me something's impossible that I know isn't, because the look on their face when they actually accomplish it is priceless. When you coach somebody and they start to see the results happening right before their eyes, they start to say to you, God, how come I didn't think of that? You're too close to the issue. Yeah, I recommend anyone working remotely, make a corner of your living room to your desk and then leave it and don't work when work's over. Be at 8 o'clock at night. Well, I'm going to check my email one last time. Then I know what will happen. It'll be 11 o'clock and you'll still be checking your email one last time. Just don't do it. And there's really no need to work. There's a reason the work week is 40 hours a week. It's because that's what somewhere along the line, some brilliant person decided that's about what we needed in order to get the output we need. But that's just an arbitrary number. You might be able to get away with 30 hours a week. Definitely not more than 40, if you ask me, I think. And I think like my daughter's generation, she's 22, her generation, they're starting to figure this out. That's why you see videos online about, oh my gosh, is this my life? I'm going to work 8 hours every single day. They're starting to figure out that it's probably not necessary. The only reason we do it is because when you first start out, you need that money in order to live. If you play your cards right, though, that can go away. This is really interesting. If you could implement one quirky tradition in every office that would boost productivity and reduce busyness, what would it be?
I would implement a meconomics exercise annually. I think when your entire team knows what's important for them, and then you can tie their individual goals to the company goals, then you have an enormously strong company culture. Over and over again, the studies will show you if you have a positive company culture, you're likely to have positive productivity, great outputs, good ideas, all of those things. And so we used to do it at my company, and I've helped a few other organizations go through this exercise. In fact, I'll put a page on my website just for listeners of your podcast with the exercise on it for free, video worksheets. Awesome. It's all there to show you how to get in touch with your meconomics and then give you some steps you can take to really protect those meconomics. So I would love for every organization to do that, so that this is what's important to Mike. If I'm a leader and I care about you, and I know you care about your next trip to Canada and being able to do that with family and not take your laptop on vacation with you, then I now have an opportunity to say, Mike, here's what we're going to do for these 2 weeks prior to your vacation to make sure you will not be bothered. Now I've tied my company objectives to your personal objective, and we're locking arms right now. Even if I say the 2 weeks prior to, I'm going to need you to put a little extra in, or I'll need you to make sure so-and-so is prepared and trained when you go, you're much more likely to embrace that than resist it, because it's in service to a meconomic objective you have. So I think that's a great way to help strengthen your company culture.
Well, that's interesting. When I was reading through my notes on you and just the initial pitch to have you come on the show, I had a feeling that we would connect really well, because like you use meconomics and busyness. And I tell my tech executives to think of their staff not as their staff, but as their tech army. And when they first hear it, they think, well, that's a strange, way to refer to it. But the reality is, what I'm trying to say is, think about how soldiers are out in battle. They have each other's back. They're constantly looking out for each other. They would almost die for one another. And you want a staff that's going to be like that. And look at them as your tech army. You start to see things a little bit differently. When you're in battle, you've got the people who are sending the mortar shells in, and then you've got the machine gun cover, and everybody has their role. But no, the general isn't running around going, here, let me launch some of these mortar shells. Here, let me have the gun. He's directing things. And that's what I want them to do, is separate themselves, pull back, and be more decentralized management. Let your team do what they're supposed to do. And then you can worry about, like you say, about your meconomics. You can get that stuff done. I know for me, probably, 5 years ago now, I needed a new computer. I ditched the laptop and I got a desktop. And I'll admit I have an app on my desktop that my iPad and my phone could connect to if necessary. But the only time I've ever used it is to work from a coffee shop and I need something on my computer. Literally, it's the only time I've ever used it. And when like that trip to Canada I mentioned before, I had a client that was going to launch and I brought my iPad. That was it. It's all I had with me. Mm-hmm. And it's because that's part of the mindset, right? You have to have the confidence that what you put in place is going to work, so that you can do the things that are important to you. I find that term meconomics more and more endearing as we talk, because too many people don't think about themselves at all. And it's always about other people. And I've asked like the leaders, they'll say, but I'm the leader. It's why I have to do that. But isn't the leader supposed to model the behavior? Yeah. And if you're all about always being at work, then your staff's going to do that. They're going to get burnt out and they're going to quit. Then you got to hire another person and then they're going to do it again. It's this vicious cycle and it just has to stop. So this has been a cool conversation. Could you let our listeners know where they might connect with you if they want to get in touch?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm most active on LinkedIn. So just look for Whitney Hahn on LinkedIn. And as I mentioned, I'll put a special page up on my website for listeners of your show. So that's provokebetter.com. Go to /edge for listeners of Mike's show. And I will put some free resources up on that page to help you get in touch with your meconomics and give you some other ways that we can get in touch if you would like to work together or just blast against hustle culture with me.
Awesome. No, we appreciate it. And I really appreciate your time here today. I know we're all busy, but you took the time to be here today and to talk to me and to the audience. And we all really appreciate it. We're just thankful that you're here.
It's my pleasure, Mike. If I can help spark a no busyness trend for others, it's absolutely my pleasure to do.
Everybody, thanks so much for being here for another episode of Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge. We have new episodes every Wednesday, streaming on YouTube and LinkedIn. No more Facebook. We changed that this week. But hope you come back next week for another great episode with another wonderful guest. And y'all have a great week.